Hey everyone, and welcome to Kerry's Garage. On this episode, I want to talk about who I am, my love of cars, and the direction I want to do with this channel. As you can tell from the first video I posted when I just kind of walked around and showed you a couple of my cars, I already have some really interesting cars with that Renault, the Triumph, and a couple of my trucks. But overall, that really doesn't skim the surface of the current collection and obsession that I have. As you'll see in my next video, when I do a yard walk around and introduction of all the vehicles I have a very unique spread currently in my yard. I think I represent 7 different countries, and we have 18 vehicles and roughly 6 motorcycles right now. Overall, it all started out when I was a kid. I've always loved cars. My mom used to tell me stories of her old 67 Cougar she had in high school, and I was always very fascinated. I always read books on old cars and just really fell in love. Well, I bought my first car when I was 14 years old. It was a 69 Ford Mustang. It was genuinely a piece of junk, but it was $100. It had a 302 V8 with a 2-barrel automatic, and I really started to teach myself, if I take something apart, how to put it together, how to do it wrong, and how it was wrong, and how to fix it. So that's really what kind of started it all off. Then my first official vehicle that I could drive was my high school vehicle, which was a 1971 VW camper van. Had a 1600cc dual port engine on it, and it was fairly thrashed. It had a lot of problems, but I was a teenager. It was my first car, and I really had to learn how to work on vehicles or I wouldn't be able to drive to school. That VW that I got in high school was really the first of me diving into kind of more unique vehicles compared to, like an American V8 or a V6 that I could have gotten at that time. From that point, I started to save any money I had, and I would buy vehicles that I could get my hands on. I really was a Volkswagen enthusiast for quite a long time. I'm still very familiar with them and I work on them, but I definitely don't have them like I used to. I've had quite a lot of VW air-cooleds over the years. Mostly I focused on buses. I've had split windows, a lot of bay windows, even a couple of Vanagons. Had a couple of Bugs, Type 3s, but I never owned a Ghia. I wanted one, but I never really found the right one that piqued my interest. It really didn't take me long to progress deeper into the rabbit hole of unique vehicles. I ended up getting a Corvair when I was around 18, 19 years old, which for the American market was a very unique vehicle when you consider when it came out in the late 1950s and 59 for the 1960 production year, that you had big American V8s and you had this very fascinating aluminum flat 6 air-cooled car. So that was definitely a bridge into the uniqueness on the American vehicles. And then slowly over time, I became obsessed with even weirder and weirder cars. What I'll end up doing as time goes on is I'll make some videos that I don't have a huge amount of videos of cars from my past, but I do have a lot of pictures. So I'll do discussions and pictures of a lot of the very fascinating and weird cars I've had over time. I did have my own business for a while working on cars, and then when I ended up moving back, when I moved away for a while, I ended up working at a couple of independent shops, and I had familiarity with working on Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes. For me, really, the more unique, the better. I'm not really a fan of working on something like a Toyota or a Honda or anything, fairly normal like that. Some of the American, like the 283 Chevy I have or the 460 I have, I'll work on it, but it's fairly standard and fairly normal. I work on it out of necessity, but I really like to work on more obscure and bizarre vehicles. Overall, in general, I focus on European vehicles since that's where most of the fascinating and unique engineering comes from. French cars have been a love of mine for quite a long time. Citroëns, Peugeots, Renaults, I've had all of them. I've had several of the Citroën D-Series cars with the hydropneumatic suspension system, coupled with the hydraulic shifting system. Actually, when I was around 19, I went to a car show out in California, and I got to ride in a 71 or 72. I have to look back. I'm trying to remember, but it was a DS21 Palace with the Citromatic with the hydraulic shifting system. And I was absolutely in love from that point forward. That's really what concreted my love of French cars. And when I came back to town from that trip, a couple of weeks later, I actually ended up finding a 1960 Citroën ID19 here in town. And I bought it, which was a fantastic introduction for me into the French cars since it was a simplified version of the D-Series. But I was able to educate and learn on that vehicle about the unique and fascinating engineering of the French cars, and that really concreted my fascination towards those vehicles. Overall, in general, weird vehicles have a way of falling into my lap. I think in the past 18 some years, I've had over 150 vehicles, so it's kind of been a really interesting road that I've taken so far. Overall, my direction for this channel is going to be to take you along and review all the vehicles that I currently have in my collection. I'll also be doing series on the resurrections and rebuilds of the cars that I have, and I'm sure along the way I'll be buying a couple of cars. I do actually have one specific vehicle that's going to be an exclusive first vehicle for the YouTube channel that I'm going to go pick up, bring home, get back on the road, and I'll do an entire video on that vehicle. It's very special to me. I touch base on it a little bit in my next video, but stay tuned on that one. So thanks so much for checking out the channel and watching, supporting me on YouTube, and stay tuned for the next videos, and everyone have a great day. Till next time.